I originally was born in South Caicos, and as a boy growing up, I one of the islands that I traveled to pretty regularly was Middle Caicos because I had formed strong family connection there. Um, but in South Caicos, life was just simple. As boys, we couldn't play with girls. Number one. Secondly, we did things like play marbles. We flew kites. We would go fishing together. There was more a sense of strong community, right? All the boys basically did things together, and especially those who live in like the same neighborhood. Earlier in my well, during my boyhood days, we didn't have electricity in South Caicos. We didn't get electricity until 1964. So we did those kind of activities, like after school, playing marbles. Of course, we got into fights too. I mean, there was hardly anything to do. But at nights, most of the people on the island had lamps. Um, some had tile lamps, some had the regular oil lamps. Just one or two businessmen had generators which serviced their business or their home, and they would run it for part of the day, but at usually around 10 o'clock at nights, they would shut it off. So we would play around those areas where we had at nights where we had lighting. But by 8 o'clock, you had to be home. And what we would do at nights with boys is that we had what we call a winder. It was a long strip, and we would, like I lived on the hill. We had a group of guys, say the area, the old field, the Gulf, and other areas. When we came together, or we would go down in the Gulf and look for guys in the Gulf and beat them with. So you know that's it. But you had regulations. You could only hit the person from the waist downwards. You're not on the upper parts of the body or the face. So I hardly got any licks because I was a sprinter. So they couldn't catch me. You had to run the guy down. And there was one guy in particular I would always earmark. It was Simeon Seymour. I was telling his son about it incidentally today, how, he was short and fat, so he could hardly run. So we targeted him a lot, right? But those were some of the things that we did during the day. Those were some of the things that we did during the night. And then you had your school to attend to. And one of the critical things was that parents during that day, everyone was your parent. Because I think you've heard the stories that anybody could discipline you. And there were, even if you saw a police in the distance or pastor, you would never, unless you have to, you would find the closest exit because you didn't want to meet that individual face to face. And the society was so structured that if a parent saw you out at 8 o'clock, if you were not going a message, you would be reported. They would report you to your parents because after 8 o'clock, you were not supposed to be seen outside. And there was the mornings, some like 3 days out of the week, we have the main public tank, which was the government main tank that distributed water, fresh water, rainwater. We didn't have running water, so we had to depend on that. You go to the public tank, you had to get your bucket, go to the public tank, make at least 2 to 3 trips. The public tank was probably about a mile from my house. And you have to bring enough water to fill your drum. And that drum would normally last you for a week. That water was only for drinking. Then we had to go, there was Basin Well, a popular well in South Caicos, which was only about 5 to 10 minutes walk from where I lived. We had to go there. You were not ashamed because all the boys in the communities had to do the same thing, right? And so we used the basin, the well water, like to wash clothes. And I was telling Terry a while ago that you could only bathe on Sundays. We had something that we call wipe off, where you dip the towel in the water and you just take it, you take off all your clothes and then you just wipe yourself. For Sunday, you go into the tub and you get your bath, because Sunday, every child had to go to Sunday school. Every child had to go to church. And one of the fascinating things is that during Easter time, and particularly during Christmas time, that was when your parents would buy you your new brand clothes, as we call it, and you go off and you show your clothes, show off your new shoes, your new socks, and so forth. But Sundays was a special day. That, and that is when your mom cook made a chicken, which was quite fascinating. You had to um, you had to go in the yard. We call it yard fowl. You didn't have no IGAs, and my uncle had a store, and one or two other people had a store. We had Turks here that came and was brought food items from Florida. But I grew up. We ate eggs that were from our own fowls or chickens, and we ate a rooster on a Sunday, or once we had sufficient, but we made sure that we had sufficient stock to keep us going. So some people, I know on a few occasions we had our own pig, and when you kill your pig, that was another big thing. So, we normally do it on a Saturday, and we go to the slaughterhouse. We called it the cow house, which was down on Congran Bay. So and all the communities would come, all members of the communities would come down there to see that activity, because there was hardly anything that was happening, right? And the same thing, Mr. Housewell Jennings and his group would go to Sail Rock to shoot a cow. They would normally do it. They would normally do it on a Saturday, because very few people had refrigerators, so you had to cook the meat. The parents would give you a little bit that Saturday night, but Sunday you had your pork or your beef, and then once you had a yard fowl or a chicken, you could also have your own chicken at that date. So you were growing your own animals. There were some people who had their own animals. Some people had hogs. Some people had cows. They got the cows from Haiti and so forth. But like I said, there were these men who would also go to East Caicos to shoot a cow. So that was basically life growing up. And I saw that evolve from lamps to electricity. I think we got electricity like in the 70s, but there was a company in South Caicos called Caicos Company. There's a group from America. When they set up the Admiral's Arms in 1964, then they they started providing electricity to people, and eventually the government took it over. I think we have moved away significantly from that togetherness to more separation. I think uh, South Caicos, for example, the fishing industry kept people together. The man go out fishing, the woman worked at the fishing plant. Everybody, you'd see everybody in almost in one area, especially one location, especially with Mr. Mike Plant in South Caicos, where my mother worked there and my father worked there after the salt industry closed. When the development started in Provo, and well, what has also happened too is that some man went to the Bahamas to make honor in Agua, Freeport, to work, and left the wife and the children back home. The other thing is that too, looking at it from a local perspective, a number of the men start coming to, say, from North Caicos and South Caicos, start coming to Provo to look for work. So, and they began to get more exposure, because you had Club Med coming in, then you had the various hotels coming in, then you had various persons from different countries coming in with different ideas, with different forms of behavior. And I think particularly with the North American culture now, where most of our tourists come from, we started to adopt more of the North American culture. And that has downplayed our culture significantly. I think we began to develop this mindset, not only that what comes from the outside is far better than what we have. If you know, I mean, Lovey has been struggling to get a music going called Combiner. Nobody paid much attention to it. We wanted to get the reggae, we wanted to get the calypso, we wanted to get the R&Bs and so forth. So as we developed, and as more persons came in um, to to take part in this development, I think I've seen a significant change, decline in our culture. Uh, even we're not even talking like how we used to talk before. We had our own little distinct way of talking. I could distinguish in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, someone who came from Saul Key, someone who came from Grand Turk, and someone who came from South Caicos. I didn't have much connection until the 90s, really, with Providenciales, you know, because we felt that Grand Turk was the big city. So if you wanted to go somewhere, you wouldn't come to Provo, you go to Grand Turk. This is before Club Med, and this is before the Third Turtle and so forth came to Provo, right? But yeah, I think we have, even our local radio station is not doing much, and I'm happy that you guys are doing this kind of project to sensitize people as to what it was like back then. We don't fly a kite no more. We don't play marbles no more. The kids are with the video games. What happens is that the kid's playing the video games by himself or by someone who's is more virtual. Back then, 4 and 5 of us would play marbles. We would communicate. We develop communication skills. We develop that spirit of togetherness. You're not doing it because you're not seeing the other person. You could detect facial expressions. You could detect bodily expression when we played together, when we played kites together. But the key thing was that we were communicating on a regular basis. We hardly do that. Everything has become we're more separate and we're more individualized. Everything, individuals, it has become more individual now. I think there were 2 individuals in South Caicos, one in particular, Mrs. Marjorie Baisden. They were my 2 primary school teachers. Mrs. Iris Stubbs, who the Iris Stubbs Primary School in South Caicos is named after now, and Mrs. Marjorie Baisden, who she was Lightburn First, who the high school in South Caicos is named after. She in particular, I think she played a major role in shaping me because, she guided me with my schoolwork. I remember her now. I can remember her now coaching me and counseling me. I, 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 I think whenever she saw me getting out of line, she would always, and the thing about it is that she never reported me to my parents. She took that responsibility, and I would never, I could never forget her for that. I think that was one of the most significant features of my life. She was more than a mentor to me. She was like a second mother to me, and she guided me, as I said, with my schoolwork. She made sure that I do that. She always paid attention to me. She would pull me aside, and if I was doing something naughty, she would chastise me. Of course, she wasn't afraid to use the strap on me, because I could be growing up, I was disgusting too, But I think she let, and then I said, I wanted to be like this lady. She was a teacher. She wasn't trained, but she was an awesome teacher. She was an outstanding teacher. I think that was of course, your parents, number, and then my brother also played a major role in my life too, because when I was growing, when I was just in my teenage, in my high teens, I wanted to go to college, and fortunately for him, he was living in Jamaica, and he paved the road. Him and his wife, they paved the road for me. So I think those 3 persons played, of course, as I said, our parents, but they played a major role into guiding me, and to not only guiding but preparing me for the career that I entered. Education has been my background. Like I said, that I had that influence from those 2 teachers in South Caicos, and then my brother and his wife were both teachers. So, and then when I was in high school too, one of the things I didn't mention is the principal came from Jamaica, and he taught me history. He was principal plus teacher, and that inspired me to, because I initially wanted to do medicine. He inspired me to do history. And so I went off to college and I did history. When I came back, actually I wanted, after that, after spending 3 years in Jamaica, although I did history, I had a passion for young people, so I wanted to go into counseling. So I went to the University of the West Indies and I did a 2-year course in social work. When I came back, they placed me back into the classroom as a teacher. And of course, I went and I pursued further studies. But in terms of building my career, history has been the subject that I taught throughout my career. And I was given the opportunity to elevate myself with struggles, because I was a straight shooter. I didn't take much nonsense in the classroom, not only in the classroom, even when I became principal, I was very outspoken about the system. I didn't like the way the system was going. And I discovered that a significant number of students had numeracy and literacy challenges. And I made every possible effort in South Caicos and in North Caicos, where I worked, to correct the situation, even going against the regulations as set out by the Ministry of Education. For example, I spent 2 years, I spent quite a number of years teaching history in South Caicos, and I was promoted in 92 to principal, 89 to vice principal, then 92 as principal. Then I transferred to North Caicos. And I found that the numeracy and literacy challenges were more severe there. So I worked with Jean Wise of Pine Key, and we built a reading lab to make sure that the kids could be able they were taught reading. We even took them out of the regular. I was not one who was hard and fast on regulations. I believe in making, as a principal, making adjustments for my students. I believe in meeting the needs of my students. Several of them couldn't read and write, so we took them out of the regular class. Why give a child biology and physics and chemistry if he can't read and write? And we made sure that we provided that foundation for them. And Pine Key Project built a reading lab. The Ministry of Education, I didn't even ask them for permission. I didn't even tell them about it until they came to graduation and they saw it. Of course, I get heckled for it, but it didn't matter. What mattered to me in my teaching career was seeing our children progress. You know, seeing I made reference all the time to, he's now a manager at Fortis, James Julian. He had the same challenges. We kept him in school for 7 years, building on that numeracy and literacy foundation. He's a manager today. You know, but my career span, you know, as I said, I was a principal. Then also I spent 10 years at the community college, and that was another uplifting move in my life. I think, for example, like South Caicos has some islands that basically remain the same, or very little has changed. I think the most drastic changes have taken place in Providenciales. I've seen Providenciales move from a community in the 60s where you probably had little over 400 or 500 people living in Providenciales, an island that you didn't want to come to. You know, like I said earlier, if you wanted to go somewhere, you go to Grand Turk. But I've seen Provo evolve from the 60s, in the last 60 years, 45, 50 years, to one of the hottest spots because of our Grace Bay Beach in the Caribbean. And, you know, the community spirit that Provo once knew has changed. Because of the influx of people. We don't even know what the population of Provo is. Because of the influx of people, people have become more separate. People have become, as I think I used the word a while ago, very individual. People have developed their own space now. And so there's that community space is gone. You know, the people are now operating in cliques. You have this association, you have that association. All the groups a significant number of the groups that have come here have preserving their own space. you know, we one of the critical elements that have taken place too is that with the development, economic development, yes, it's creating you know, job opportunities, but also when we look into our school system, when I was going to school here, even when I was teaching in the high schools, the most significant number of teachers in the system were Turks Islanders. And I'm not hitting anything against outside teachers, but my point is, if you develop a curriculum that is focusing on Turks and Caicos history, you can't have a Jamaican or a Trinidadian teach Turks and Caicos history because they don't have that passion for it. And when I look at the community college, even at the community college, we have the TCI history. How many Turks Islanders are there to teach that particular subject? So the thing about it is that that is also contributing to the loss of our cultural heritage, because those persons are not sensitive to teaching that area. How can I go to Jamaica or Barbados or the United States and teach the United States or Canada and teach their history? I can't do it, you know. And that is one of the biggest, that is why people are talking about we're losing our culture. Yes, if you go to a Jamaican school, the culture is an integral part of the curriculum, their dance, their drama, etc. We can't do that in Turks and Caicos. If you have a Jamaican teacher, they can teach you about what they knew coming. It's now one of my friends referred to it as our education system has been sourced out. That is so true, you know. So we have the Turks and Caicos has been basically sourced out. So sourced out meaning that we're basically lost. But it is that we can truly associate with and truly identify with, and that has been one of the principal factors that development has brought, uncontrolled development.